Broadcast is now starting.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar where we will talk about the leading indicator forecasting project at Bekaert. I'm Rebekah Cui, Sales and Marketing Manager for Solventure Life, and with me is Rebekah Cui, Marketing Manager for Bekaert. Let's take a look at the agenda for today. We will first give a short introduction on Solventure Life, and then Rebekah will give a company introduction to Bekaert, and we'll give you some more information on the current demand planning process at Bekaert. And then we will dig deeper into how leading indicator forecasting or how the leading indicator forecasting project is currently developing there, and we will share some results and experience. In the end, we will make some time for some questions. If you have some questions during the webinar, and to the webinar panel, and you can write down your question in the question tab. All right, Solventure Life. So who are we? At Solventure Life, we are specialized in advanced forecasting solutions. So more exactly, leading indicator forecasting. So over the past 5 years, we have conducted a lot of research into how to include external data into the sales forecasting process. We have a PhD researcher in our team who is now finalizing his PhD on this topic, and we had several master theses covering this topic or different aspects of this topic as well. So what we've seen is basically by including external data into the sales forecast, can not only improve forecast accuracy, but more and also very importantly, we gain a lot of insights into the market environment and what is driving the business. So, you know, a lot of companies operate on a global level, so it's normal that there's global external factors which can influence the sales. We have gathered data from various global data providers like the FRED, ECB, IMF, OECD in our data tool, where we now have more than 350,000 external information in there, and we use that information to match it with your sales data. So if we look at external indicators which can influence your sales, we not only talk about macroeconomic factors, but there's also events, promotions, calendar effects, weather, legislation, regulations, social media, which can affect the sales data. With our leading indicator solution, we can combine several external effects. So we can combine macroeconomic factors with weather data or the impact of weather on your sales, and also the impact of events and promotions on your sales to ultimately generate a better forecast. So when we look at the different types of industries there are, we see that not all industries are affected by the same type of external information. So we see, for example, in the discrete and high-tech industry, where Bekaert is in also, macroeconomic factors are important, but also legislation, regulation, events. Whilst in a more FMCG and retail industry, we see that promotions and calendar effects can play a bigger role. In Solventure, we also have references over different types of industries. So you see that we have references in the chemical and process industry, discrete and high-tech, and also food and CPG. And then a little word more about Solventure and its different business units. So within Solventure, we have Solventure Life, which I just introduced to you, where we are experienced in advanced forecasting analytics, and where we use leading indicators, leading global data to improve forecast accuracy and gain insights into the market and into the business. Then we also have the Solventure S&OP business unit, which is specialized in designing and implementing sales, inventory, and operation planning processes, where we focus on 4 main pillars. So people, process, tools, and analytics. And we have a software, Archiva, which support this process. So we do software-based consulting there. And then we also have our Solventure Academy, as we've seen that a lot of businesses need advanced supply chain knowledge. Started with our accelerator days, which are training days across Europe, where we give trainings on specific topics like demand planning or inventory. We also do tailor-made boost camps. So this is in company. If your company is in need of training on demand planning topics, we can provide a tailor-made training for your company. All right, you can visit our websites. You can see them down below the slide, each of those business units. And now I will give the word to Rebekah, which is going to give you an introduction of Bekaert.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Rebekah. I'm working as marketing manager in Bekaert and based in Belgium, and I'm working mainly on marketing intelligence, and that's the reason why I'm involved in this project, to understand more about the indicators and which kind of factors are influencing our industry, and of course with the hope that we can also improve forecast accuracy. So a few words about Bekaert. Maybe most of you already know Bekaert or not. So Bekaert is founded in 1880, and we are active in 120 countries and very diverse industry. Our key business is steel wire. So we use steel wire in different industry, and we have around 30,000 employees worldwide with a revenue around 4.4 billion euro in 2015, and we are a stock listed company. And actually Bekaert wire is everywhere. Every year around 500 million bottles of champagne are opened via the mousselet made of Bekaert wires, and 1 out of 3 tires around the world is reinforced with Bekaert tire cord. And in industry and construction, every year 5 million of concrete is being reinforced with Dramix. And we are also active in, for example, consumer goods like book binding, and also sewing wire to cut wafers. So, and as I said, that we want to be closer to the market by driving the customer into the heart of our business, and we want to drive the growth based on value. And of course, we also want to be first in technology and speed to the market, and we also want to leverage our scale to greater effect, to reduce complexity, in the end to achieve lowest total cost. Yeah, and we are active in different industries, as I explained. Currently my division is mainly focused on automotive, but Bekaert is also active in construction, energy, equipment, consumer goods, etc. But automotive is the biggest sector that we apply our products. And we are also a global player. It means that actually there are different dynamics in each of the region. We need to consider different macroeconomic situation, different product as well. We need to consider especially the situation in mature and growth market are very different. Growth rates are different, regulations are different, especially these days if you see a lot of the political factors. It's also important for us to monitor the change and the market. Okay, so that is the introduction on Bekaert, the company, and also a bit more about the project. Currently, I think in most of company is like this, how we do forecast. We do bottom up and top down. So bottom up is more the consolidation of sales and supply chain team. Here we have more short-term forecast, more or less around 3 months. And top down is more about strategic level. So we check more the factors, marketing trends, growth rate, GDP, all these things. Then we combine together to have a yearly forecast, or sometimes even longer. So as you can imagine, there's also some challenges to align these two sometimes. Of course, to have really a tactical and actionable forecast, it's very difficult. Sometimes it's over forecasting, sometimes under forecasting. I think everyone work in supply chain know more than I do that there is no really the ideal truth of forecast, but it's better to the closer the better. So currently, if we look at our current company forecast, let's say this is a case we take in the history. So month 1, so 1 month forecast, let's say we focus now for next month, is around 10%. Then month 2, 3, forecast currency goes down the longer the forecast horizon, which of course also is the reality in most of the company, because of course the first month you know more about which customers will order, then later on it's more a guess based on the trend you feel. So so that is the current situation. So what we hope for, of course, when we start the project with SoVenture, the very interesting thing is to have external data that potentially can help us predict sales on the tactical horizon, for example, 6 to 9 months, and to understand which factors are influencing our not only demand but also influencing our own sales. In my industry, it's automotive, then you have different factors, raw material prices, regulation changes, and to understand which kind of data is available and which kind of data is relevant. And also we have our complexity. We have different products, different region. So that was the intention to work with SoVenture. So we can identify the big data. I mean, we can provide or identify the direction of big data, and they can run into their model. In the end, we can discuss the indicators, which make sense, which ones don't make sense, and with the hope to improve forecast accuracy.
Okay, so as Rebekah told us, they are looking also into what external information can maybe help them to improve their forecast accuracy and also get a better understanding of the market environment they are operating in. So to give you a good idea of how leading indicator forecasting works, it's good to start with how traditional forecasting works and what's the technique of traditional forecasting. So basically, when we look at traditional forecasting methods, they use historical data and extrapolate that data into the future. So internal sales data, trend, seasonality are used to build that forecast. That is good when a certain trend persists, and when the upward trend, for example, here consists, and it's logical that the extrapolation technique extrapolates that trend into the future. However, a sales cycle is never ideal, and a trend can be broken down by certain events from outside or that can affect your sales, basically. So to better measure those inflection points, because those extrapolation techniques tend to fail and tend to over or under forecast when those inflection points occur. So with the leading indicator forecasting, we aim to improve at forecasting practice and to better turn those corners those inflection points occur. So when we look at traditional forecasting compared to leading indicator forecasting, see that we don't want to extrapolate previous trends, but we want to work with external information and use that external information to build a forecast which better follows the sales cycle. How does the principle work? Basically, what you first need to do is, of course, you need to find the leading indicators for your sales and define the leading indicators which match with your sales. And when you found the indicators, and the leading value is a very important asset there. So the leading value gives you an indication of how far in the future you can make a forecast. So let's say, for example, that oil price is a leading indicator for your sales, and it has a leading value of 9 months. you can use, then you can say that if there's a peak in the sales, in the oil price today, it will generate a peak in your sales 9 months later, because the leading value is 9 months. So that's basically the principle of forecasting with external leading indicators. And of course, it's the most interesting when the lead of the value leading indicator is bigger, because then you can forecast on a longer term horizon. So that is also what we want to address, or what we want to improve at Bekaert, and help them build a tactical forecast up to 9 months out. So how did we approach, or how did we start this project at Bekaert? Typically what we do in a leading indicator project is a 3-step approach, where we first do a leading indicator scan. In the scan, it's important, there are 4 important stages. So it's important to have a mind mapping session. As Rebekah told you already before as well, are interested in knowing market information and market intelligence for their several product groups. So it's important to gather their information as well, because it's very much a cooperation and the customer and us to really indicate what is important for the sales of that specific product group in that specific region, and really map everything out to make a good search in our data pool of indicators. So when we first do the mind mapping, then we're going to use that information to do the pre-processing and use selective search, the brute force statistics, so our brute force analytics will generate an output of indicators based on the mind mapping session, and also other statistical correlation, etc. So when we have that output of indicators, we will make a selection again together with the customer, where we see which indicators are relevant, which indicators are intuitively connected to your business, and we will use those indicators to start a pilot phase and validate the stability of the indicators, eventually to use it in an operational way. So as I said, we did a leading indicator scan, and we selected some product groups and regions at Bekaert. We did a mind mapping session where we looked at what are the key components of those product groups, what information do we have on the business, what market information do we have, and also what market information does Bekaert have available, because a lot of companies, of course, buy market intelligence and use market intelligence for strategic purposes, but also for forecasting purposes. And it's good to really see if the market information available is to be validated at a quantitative level, and really in an objective manner to see, because the market information that companies have is often influenced by what you think that relates to the business, and that is most of the time right, but you don't know if that information has a leading value and if it can be used for forecasting purposes. So in that phase, it's really good to really map out the whole product group and the region and the different assets involved there. So when we do that, then we have the selective search in our data pool, and the leading indicators that come out of the scan then rated on a statistical correlation, and then it's the purpose to really look at the business relevance of those indicators that came out of the scan. What kind of intuitive connection do you have with the sales? Does it make sense to use those indicators to build forecasts with, etc. So that's what mainly happens in the first phase, in the leading indicator scan. And then in the second phase, we really want to validate those indicators and look at the stability of the indicators. So in the pilot project, we just started the pilot project at Bekaert. We are now validating the leading indicators we have selected in the scan, and we are looking at their evolution. How do they evaluate over time, and what are the business insights we can learn from those indicators. As well as we do this monthly basis, we meet each other to really discuss the results, and also there it's important to really see what are the changes in those indicators and in those forecasts. Sometimes the forecast it shows an unusual path, and that could be, for example, by effects from external events. So a change in regulations, for example, could have caused a change in the forecast. So these are types of discussions we really want to have in that pilot phase, and which we really need to discuss. So now I will show you a forecast comparison over historical sales data over a period of 9 months, where I compare the traditional forecasting method, a Holt-Winters method, with the current in-company forecast of Bekaert and the leading indicator forecast. I will use the MAPI to evaluate the forecast accuracy. So when we look at this graph, when we see here, we forecasted it from this point onwards. So this is month 1, and we build the forecast 9 months out. Forecast from Bekaert is 3 months out, because they make forecasts on the short term 3 months out. You see that there is a peak in the sales basically, and the Holt-Winters method here, the green line, did see the peak but a bit too early, which resulted in a forecast accuracy over time of 15%. Bekaert did see the peak a bit too late, and this resulted in a forecast accuracy of 13%. The live forecast did see the peak, and this is also then reflected in the sales forecast here, which has a lower forecast error. When we continue and we go to the 3rd month, so we now use the information from the previous months to build again a new forecast over 9 months out. We again see that there is a downward trend in the sales, which is seen by both or by all trends, but the forecast accuracy or the Holt-Winters sees it a bit too early, and the Bekaert forecast sees it a bit too late. So this is again reflected here in the MAPI. When we continue to month 5, we've used the information from the previous 4 months, and we again see the forecasts from the different methods, where we see that the peak here in the sales is a bit too early at Bekaert and a bit too late at Holt-Winters, and the leading indicator forecast is quite along the peak here, but a bit early maybe. This is also reflected in the MAPI here, where we see a forecast error of 7.4% for live, 14% for Holt-Winters, and the Bekaert forecast with 9%. Then when we continue to the 7th month, we see here that the Bekaert forecast actually performed better than the leading indicator forecast. Now, this is typically what we want to discuss in this pilot project. We want to know why the forecast of Bekaert performed better, or why our leading indicator forecast didn't perform as good as in the previous months. So that is where we really dig into the information, and we try to look for what is really driving the demand there, and why did it cause a drop in the accuracy of the leading indicator forecast. And that is typically something which we do together. We look for, are there specific events that have happened? Is this due to an event? And then we can take that information into account for further forecasting in the next periods. So when we go then to month 9, we have taken that information into account. We have looked for what is really driving the sales, and why didn't it perform as good as we expected. And we take that information, and we build again a forecast where we have used the information, and this, you see, it resulted again in a better forecast here for live. The Holt-Winters is very dramatically wrong here, or it really extrapolated dramatically wrong, and the Bekaert forecast forecasted it 3 months out, but since the peak after the 3 months happened here, it didn't really see that coming. So when we look at the forecast comparison over a period of 6 to 9 months, and we started at month 1, we didn't have a forecast for Bekaert for month 4 and month 9. The live forecast was there, and the Holt-Winter forecast was there as well, but you see that the live forecast definitely outperformed the Holt-Winter forecast. So this can conclude us that the live forecast can be a good solution for Bekaert to take into account to see if that can help them to build a tactical horizon forecast. All right, and now I will give the word back to Rebekah, and she will share some of her experiences of working together with us and the leading indicator scan and the pilot project.
So far we have worked together for some time, and first of all, indeed, as Deborah said, we have identified some key indicators which we think make sense, and we have also run 2 months already to see whether these indicators can help the forecasting. So far has been, I can only say it's quite positive experience. It has been very collaborative, so it's very good cooperation, because I can give some guidance to say, okay, look, I think this data makes sense, and they can look external data, or I can even send a set of data for them to run, and in the end we can discuss every month and to see which indicators potentially can make sense. Of course, everyone need to keep in mind that we are all experimenting a bit to understand which ones can be the one. So we all need to accept that things can change, but in the end, I think it's always in a good direction. Yeah, so what I can say is definitely, so the pilot project indeed has reviewed some new indicators that before we have never thought about, or maybe we have thought about it, but we never had quantitative proof. And now we are indeed very excited to test and to see the forecasting power on a longer term. So now we have done 2 months, but indeed will be interesting to see, okay, these indicators work in historical data, whether it will also work on a longer term. And what we look for, as I also explained already quite a bit, so we look for improved business insights, to understand the market, to also forecast, also leading indicators for different regions and different products, and also to have the possibility to tap into external big data, and in the end, hopefully we can also achieve accurate or more accurate sales forecast. So Venture Live, this leading indicator solution, I can say that it is indeed, it's very interesting and very add value at this stage. Of course, we still need to see it on the long term, but currently they are giving us some inspiration that we didn't think about it, and also give us some guidance in improving our sales forecast. That potentially, I definitely think it can be a good chance that we can really achieve a good forecast, but we are still in a good test phase. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Rebekah, for sharing your experience, and I hope you all had some understanding of what we're doing at Bekaert. Now, looking forward to see if you have some questions here. I see here one question. What is the relevance for marketing people? This type of project, maybe Rebekah, you have some insights there?
Yeah, indeed. I think most of people, most audience are working in supply chain, so obviously it adds a lot of value in forecast accuracy in terms of planning for production. I think for me and for marketing intelligence, indeed it's more strategic level, so to understand what kind of indicators exist in the market, what kind of things can influence our sales, and it's more marketing intelligence level to understand the relation between our business and the macroeconomics. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see here another question popping up. Would it be valuable for improving both sales and supply chain processes? I think it definitely does, because on a marketing level or on a sales level, it gives a lot of insights into the market, and gives you a strategic information, and you can use that information to really see will you have to boost sales because the market is going this way or that way? And then for supply chain processes, yeah, definitely, because it can help you improve the forecast accuracy. And I think in the end, every company is looking for improving the forecast accuracy and improving the demand forecast to eventually optimize the whole business processes in total.
Yeah, I see another question from Kun. Could you give an example of a leading indicator that come out of this study and give you new insights based on external data? Indeed, I think that's definitely a very relevant question, and one of a good indicator that come out with a pleasant surprise is indeed more the production of another type of raw material that also used in our end application. So in automotive, for example, we are producing steel wire, but actually other things, let's say rubber or chemicals or other things. These things, of course, we knew upfront it's correlated, but we never knew precisely whether they're leading or not. And these kind of things, I think it's interesting to know. Of course, you have different suppliers supply different raw material components to same industry, and maybe that can be interesting to understand. And that's one of the things that we are looking into at this stage.
I see another question here. Could you give some indications towards length and workload of this project implementation, duration of to determine the leading indicators? Right. The process works in different phases, and the leading indicators can, if you start this as a new project, it probably will take you 6 weeks to really have the process of finding the relevant leading indicators, because you have to make some time to discuss this with the customer, and you really first start with a mind mapping session. So that's a meeting which we need to do. Then we make a first analysis based on those results. We also need to evaluate the indicators which we present there, and we need to kind of intuitively connect with the customer and see which ones are making sense for them. And then we do another run of the scan, or another run of the indicators, which then gives you a final set of indicators which you can use in the pilot phase. And the pilot phase, typically we take out 3 to 6 months to really validate those indicators. I think the pilot phase, it takes some time, a monthly meeting at least, to give some guidance and some discussion on the results. And also, you need to deliver the data, of course, so that also takes some time, and some sparring, I think, between the customer and ourselves to really discuss those results. That's kind of necessary there.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I can discuss a bit more about workload. So first of all, I think definitely one person needs to be assigned in to this project. And I think indeed, as Deborah said, monthly meeting to review the project results. And there will be some iteration to say, okay, I think this is not fine, this can you rerun? So that's one thing. Another thing, of course, monthly you need to deliver the sales data and forecast, and depends on how available this data is, then that it should be relatively fine workload. But biggest part, it's more to brainstorm, as Deborah says, like the mind map, to understand and identify the potential possible indicators. And then it will depend on the data quality each company has, and also what they can find, because what they can find some public data. So if you can also give them some internal data or the data you purchase, that of course can speed up the process. Overall, I think if you know the industry well enough, and that can be faster. But also it depends a bit on the luck if you indeed find the indicator that makes sense.
Okay. So then let's see if we have some other questions here. Yeah, so another question, how do you typically run a pilot? And once you implement, how often do you need to review whether your leading indicators are still valid? So I think we, for a bit, discussed this already in the previous question. So, but for the pilot phase, we take out a period of 3 to 6 months. And then when we are implementing it on an operational phase, I think the iterations are on a half-year base that we need to reevaluate those indicators and see if they are still valid, and yeah, have just a data check on the indicators and see if they are still stable. But when you operationally implement it, the workload I think significantly is lower. You have the monthly review, but we don't have to look for those indicators anymore, and we don't have to validate those indicators anymore, not as much as we do in the pilot phase. Then another question, do you only use open source data? No, we can use any data basically. In our data pool now we have data from the FRED and IMF and all these types of databases, but we can actually tap into any kind of data available. So if you have or if you would like to evaluate data from private data providers, that is not a problem to integrate it into our data or into our data analytical tool, and we can use basically any information to run through our analytical model. So we can use we can tap into a lot of data available. All right, I think we can finish the webinar here. Thank you, Rebekah.
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.